So, as I explained the story, the idea of the chair of Hezekiah is because as Sancheriv, after he had destroyed or exiled the 10 tribes in the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, or Ephraim, he came south to Judah, and he encircled Jerusalem. And Hezekiah prayed to God to help him. According to the story of the book of Kings, in Kings 2, an angel of God appeared, created some noise in the camp of Sancheriv, and killed many of his men, and actually in the thousands. And the Assyrians heard this noise, and they thought, oh, the Judeans brought the Egyptians' army against us too, so they all ran away, and Jerusalem was saved. So the vision that Yohanan ben Zakai sees of Hezekiah is a vision to explain to him that Hezekiah is saying it's okay. What you did was okay. You wouldn't have gotten Jerusalem anyway. So that's put the throne because Hezekiah is coming to greet him. So getting back to our story here. So as we said about this saying of to do something which is a credit both to God and to man. And as I said, is going to be Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai had to make this decision because he didn't know which path was before him. But the decision was made already. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, in this first mission of chapter 2, he says in general, a person has to pick a path which has a balance. You have to have God in mind and man in mind, and then you'll just do the right thing. What other things does he say? You should be very cautious with the commandments, because what you might think is a simple command of God might be not so simple. You don't really know how be scrupulous in performing even a minor mitzvah, because you don't know the calculation and you don't know the reward. Sometimes the smallest things could be a big deal. And what you think is the biggest thing could be small. So it's not always, sometimes it's the good word that you do. Remember a story that happened to me one time. There was a fellow who was studying with me in high school. I was 15, he was 16. And in the evening, we used to sit in the study hall, the whole school together, and studying with buddies, with partners. In Hebrew, we call it chavruta. And he used to talk to me every now and then, because sometimes I would study by myself. And he would tell me how things were going, how his day was. I was actually quite studious, but if he talked to me, I would, he was trying to be nice. So I was nice to him too. And after high school was over, we went our ways, and that was it. I meet him maybe 25 years later in Jerusalem. And this guy, Avner, comes over to me, and he recognized me. I recognize him. How you doing? How things going? Tells me the stuff he's been involved in, whatever. Then he says, Rafi, I want to just say thank you. I said, thank you for what? We were just friends in high school. That's not a reason to say thank you. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, that year, you were in 10th grade, I was in 11th grade. That year, I'd lost my father. And I took it really hard. I felt very, very lonely. It was really hard for me. I was depressed. And nobody knew about this in the whole high school. I had no friends. I had nobody to talk to about it. But every time we talked, I felt like I had a friend, and it was very helpful. So he thanked me. So here I was. I thought I was just being friendly. I didn't realize that there was any major value to being friendly with the fellow who was talking to me almost every evening for 10 to 15 minutes. Turns out that that little thing became a big mitzvah, which I was not aware of. So sometimes in life, the little things that we do sometimes could be big mitzvahs, And what we think the big ones are not necessarily so, but sometimes are. So that's what Yehuda Nasi says. You don't really know. Look at three things and you'll never do a transgression. Know what's above you. There's also an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything is written down in the books. That part I've actually talked about in other places, about the statement of Rabbi Akiba. But at the moment, I want to hold Rabbi's statement for a moment. The statement about looking at your life in the sense of creating a balance, having God in mind and man in mind. By the way, his son, Rabban Gamliel, also seems to talk about something which is a little bit, in a sense, a continuation of what his father said. I just want to read that to you too. Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, said, Yafeh Tamud Torah im derech eretz, yegiat shnehem mashkachat avon. It is good to study Torah and have a livelihood. That's the way Rashi explains derech eretz. In general, in the Mishnah and in the Talmud in general, derech eretz can mean one of two things. It can mean a livelihood, because that's the way of the land. That's the way, derech eretz, the way of the land, that you have to have an occupation in order to survive, to feed yourself and your family. And derech eretz is sometimes used as being a moral person, having a moral compass, or even, in a sense, moral common sense, if you want to put it that way. We even have an expression which developed mentioned in many places, where we say derech eretz kadma la Torah, which means being a good person comes before Torah. What does that mean? It means that historically, the idea of just being a good person was known before the Torah was given, because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who went in the right way, as God says about Abraham, that he went in the path of justice and righteousness. So this was before the Torah was given in Sinai. So mankind discovered the path of justice and righteousness before the Torah was given. Derech eretz, which means morality, came before the Torah was given. So too a human being is able to understand logically or rationally why it's proper to do the right thing. As Immanuel Kant will say many generations later at the end of the 18th century, that to be a good person, morality is a priori. It's something we understand intuitively, but we know that it's correct. So Rabban Gamliel says it's good to study Torah and to have an occupation. You don't want to be dependent on other people for your livelihood. And also, both these things will keep you away of sin, because when a person is idle, that brings to sin, according to Talmudic thinking. But when you're busy, it keeps you away. You have fulfillment in your life, and that keeps you away of the wrong things. And he says, any Torah which does not have a livelihood, it's going to, in the end, the Torah itself will become annulled, and it will bring to sin. Because you need this balance, and you can't be dependent, and not everybody knows how to live in poverty and be happy about it. So he said, he gives, I would say, a very sane piece of advice. This actually reminds us of the Talmud in Brachot in chapter 6, the argument of Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, where Rabbi Yishmael says, Rabbi Yishmael says that when the Torah says, 6 days you shall work, and the 7th day you shall rest, or it also says you shall plant in the planting season and harvest in the harvest season, on the one hand. On the other hand, it says in Joshua, you should study Torah day and night. So he says, how do you balance both? Rabbi Yishmael says. He says it's to teach you derech eretz, which here I'm saying common sense, that you're supposed to study Torah when you can, and also you have to work in order to have a livelihood. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said, no, if you're going to plant and you're going to reap, when are you going to study Torah? But trust in God, and God will help you find your sustenance. The Talmud ends the discussion with an anecdote and says, many people tried, according to Rabbi Yishmael, to keep a balance between Torah study and an occupation, and it worked. And others tried to do according to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and just trust in God, and it didn't always work. Because you have to be on a certain level for that to work. It said in the name of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, what does it mean, Harbe asu kerashbi v'lo alta b'yadam, that many did according to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and it didn't work? Because if you're just mimicking Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, it's not going to work. Only if you can be like Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai on that level, with total trust in God, then it could work. It's a level to be on. It's a level to be on. The last thing I want to do is compare this question of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, what is the right path for a person to follow, and show how it compares in the same chapter to almost the same question that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai asks in Mishnah 13. He says, let's go out and find the right path, the derech tovah, the good path for a person to cling to. Almost the same question. But he gives a different answer. I want to explain the answer and then make the comparison between these two sages, both of them pivotal figures in our history. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the redactor of the Mishnah, from the line of Hillel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai, a student of Hillel, and the academy of Pirkei Avot. So he says, what is the right way to go? And then he says his 5 students had each one a different answer. The Maharal of Prague points out he only had 5 students. He was the head of Pirkei Avot. He could have had 100 students. Why 5? He says because these 5 represents 5 different answers. So it says here, what are the 5 things are? The first one, Rabbi Lezer says, Ayin Tovah, to have a good eye. What does it mean to have a good eye? First of all, I want to debunk what a lot of people think about the evil eye, which is the opposite of a good eye, because it's actually mentioned here in the next Mishnah, which I won't get to. You have these people think that evil eye is some magical thing. And they do all these crazy things and ceremonies. And this looks half like witchcraft to get around it. I want to debunk it according to an interpretation I heard from Rabbi Shabtai Sabato, and I think it's the simple meaning that the Talmud is talking about. The Talmud says, if you're walking next to your neighbor's field, when it's in the time of the year when all the grain is at its height, and the field is just about ready to be reaped, you shouldn't look too much because that's like the evil eye. Well, why is that the evil eye? I'll tell you why. Rabbi Sabato explained like this. When you see your neighbor's field and you see that he's got all those acres of stuff to be reaped, you're thinking, wow, he's done really well for himself this year. And then in your heart, you have a little prayer. You say to God, why couldn't I get all that? Why couldn't I have a field like that ready to go to market? My goodness, he's going to rake it all in with his corn, with his grain, with apples, whatever it might be. And that little prayer, there's a big power to prayer. So when people walk by and they see this guy with all his agriculture and what it's going to bring him, people can get jealous. That's called Ayin Hara, the evil eye. And because people get jealous, it's almost like they're praying, why does that guy deserve it and not me? And it's not good for that guy. We also say in the Talmud says that blessing is found where the eye is not. In other words, let me put it in simple terms. You want to win the lottery, don't tell everybody that you won it. That's gonna, if you did win it. You want your business to be successful, don't start talking about it to everybody. Just do it. You want to keep it out of the public eye. Because the power of prayer is very strong. And people who are suffering in their lives and they see somebody else, that little prayer, even if they didn't mean it at the moment in that sense, it's a powerful thing. From this, we can understand what the good eye is. A good eye is a person who their interface with the world is always good. They see somebody successful, they say, good on you. That's the way it should be done. They don't say, oh, I'm so jealous, I wanted that. You're so lucky. They don't say that. They say, good for you. May all halavai aliyid, let all people, all our people, all other people, let everybody be successful. When Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Joshua that there are two guys in the camp who got prophecy, Eldad and Medad, in Bamidbar, he didn't say that's terrible. He said, may it be that all of the people of Israel get prophecy, not just these two guys. I'm not jealous. If they got it, they got it. What's wrong with that? That's having the good eye. Seeing somebody successful and being happy about it because somebody was successful. Okay? And you want more people to be successful too. That's what we want. We want people to be happy and have the good things in life. We don't want them to suffer. That's the good eye. They say, look, this world is wonderful. Look, these people are successful. That means the world is good. I remember one guy was traveling in a taxi, and I was influenced by this Mishnah. So he was telling me, he points to a certain hotel that just went up on St. Jacques Street in Montreal. And he's telling about the guy who built it and how successful he's been building all these hotels. So I said to him, okay, I guess I don't have to worry about this guy. He says, you're right, you definitely don't have to worry about this guy. So that's it, nothing wrong with that. People work hard, they're successful. We say in Hebrew, kol hakavod. Let it continue, why not? Let them use it for good reasons, good purposes. So the first one is Ein Tova, to be able to look at the world from a positive vantage point, to be happy that there is success in the world, to be happy that people are able to pull themselves out of poverty, to be happy that there are good things in this world. Ein Tova. Rabbi Joshua said, Chaver Tov, a good friend. That doesn't mean to find a good friend. It means to be a good friend. Rabbi Yossi says, Shachen Tov, a good neighbor, which means to be a good neighbor. Now, these three are interesting because they're all related. In my mind, I can interface with the world positively. And when I interface with the world positively, so it's the way I see things is the way things reflect to me too. What comes around goes around, we say. And in Proverbs it says, "Kamayim panim al panim ken lev adam al adam." Just like when you look in the water, you see your reflection. So too, the way you look at your friend or your neighbor, they're going to look at you. Life is a reflection. So if you're positive and you look at people the right way, if you're the good friend, if you're the good neighbor, they're going to be your good friend and your good neighbor. Remember, friends you can choose. Neighbor is hard. So it's not just in your mind to interface positively, but to be that good friend and to be that good neighbor. And that will influence how people see you too. Those are 3 of the 5. Then we have 2 interesting ones, which seem to be different. Rabbi Shimon says, Haroet anolad, somebody who can see the future. What does it mean see the future? It doesn't mean a prophet. It means they understand the outcomes of what I'm going to be doing or what somebody else is going to do. In that sense, the Talmud says, Chacham adif minavi. It's better to be wise than to be a prophet. Because a prophet can only see what God shows them. But a wise person can extrapolate what's going to happen. If you do this, what's going to happen? If you do that, what's going to happen? Because it's obvious to them, the outcome. That's what it means. The wise one who sees what's going to be born in the future. They can see the outcomes. If you can see the outcomes of actions, you can help yourself, you can help others because you understand the way it works. And you also understand that if you do something wrong, what the outcome is going to be. So that's very encompassing. If you have that wisdom to understand, it'll explain to you why you have to be positive and why it's bad to be negative. And the last one is Lev Tov, a good heart. A good heart actually means somebody with empathy. Somebody who can feel the pain of others, and therefore they like to help. I've always said, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? Sympathy is, you bump into a friend of yours, says, you know what, I lost my job, things are really going bad. But what can I do? I'll deal with it. And they say, "Yo, that's so terrible. It makes me feel terrible, really, to hear that. I really wish you well, and I hope you can get over it." That's sympathy. Empathy is, guy says, "You know what? I just lost my job. It's just terrible. I don't know how it happened. I mean, I'll get over it, but just I'm a little bit in the blues." And say, "Wow, you lost your job. You want to tell me about it a little bit? What happened?" Possibility number one. Possibility number two, what type of job are you in? Maybe if I know someone in those areas, I'll ask around. Maybe somebody, in other words, you want to do something because you want to help them get out of it. You don't want to commiserate just. You want to see if you can do something. Sometimes you never know. Sometimes you actually know somebody who's in that field, surprisingly, but it didn't mean anything to you because you weren't in that field. So the one who has the empathy really wants to solve the problem if they can, that they would like to, because they can really feel the pain. So these 5 things, interestingly enough, are all about creating a society. What is the right way to go that a person should cling to? It's all about society. The good eye, being a good friend, being a good neighbor, understanding what things can come out of your actions, and having a good heart. The question at the beginning of the chapter of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, in the first Mishnah, of what is the right path to go, the right path to go was a religious path of a balance between God and man, of knowing that you have to take the mitzvot seriously. It's a different focus. I want to explain why it's a different focus. Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakai is living at the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. He requested Kerem B'Yavneh to bring the scholars, but he realizes that in order for there to be a future in Roman-occupied Judea, they have to rebuild Jewish society, Judean society. For this, people are going to have social skills to work with the people around, whether scholars or not. You're going to need to have that good eye, to be that good friend. We really need that, to be the good neighbor, to be the one who understands the results of their actions, to be somebody with empathy, with a good heart. These are the things that we're going to need as instruments in order to recreate the destroyed society of Israel, where everybody is going to have this post-traumatic stress. So that's why he's focusing on. He says to his students, what do we do? What is the right path to follow now that we want to recreate the society that has just been destroyed after 3 years of war? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is writing these Mishnayot in the year 200. It's not year 70, it's 200. It's 130 years later. At this point, it looks obvious that the Jewish society of Judea is not working. The Romans are difficult to work with. Jewish society, the Jews are now moving to Babylonia, already in the year 200. Rav sets up the yeshiva in Surah, Shmuel sets it up in Naharda. The Jews are moving en masse to Babylonia. It's not even clear what type of society will remain in Judea, which becomes renamed by the Romans Palestine for a while. And so he says what we have to do is realize that our contribution to the Jewish world is going to be in Torah study. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi understands that the contribution of the scholars in the land of Israel, even though they will be a small part of Jewish society, the large part will be in Babylonia, but they will contribute to Torah scholarship. Therefore, he's telling all of his scholarly friends, live a life which has a balance between God and man. Be sensitive to society and to God at the same time. Understand that it's not just the mitzvot that you thought were the big mitzvot. There could be little mitzvot when you deal with people that you didn't even realize how important they are. And then his son, Rabbi Gamliel, says, also understand you need Torah and an occupation. And if you see people living in Israel and Babylonia who are spending a long time on their occupation, don't belittle it. This is the way, because both things will save a person from sin, both Torah study and the occupation when they keep themselves busy. So Rabbi Yehuda understands that the Torah is going to be what will save the Jews in Babylonia, to have some type of anchor to their tradition through the years of the exile. And therefore, what he's talking about is a little bit different than what Yohanan ben Zakai is talking about, which was 100 years, 130 years before that. These are some ideas I had on these two Mishnayot, or three Mishnayot, you might say, in chapter 3. And I wish everybody shalom, shalom. May Tisha B'Av, which is coming up soon after next Shabbat, turn into a day of jubilant happiness for the people of Israel, with the full rebuilding of Jerusalem, the establishment of a temple, which will be a house of worship for all nations. Amen.